Hello, my true crime buddies. Welcome back to another episode. This one is gruesome, okay? Just putting it out there. Hence, I have saved it for the month of October, where I am doing gruesome and Halloween-themed true crime. Oh dear, this one is a little bit creepy. We are in France for today's episode, so their names are French. I am not doing a French accent for you guys. I love you, but I am not doing French. So I struggle with English pronunciations of towns and names, so I'm not going to have much hope with French. So I shall do my best by you guys, and let's get into it. Today we're going to be talking about Christine and Leah Papin. They are two sisters who were live-in maids and were convicted of murder on the 2nd of February 1933. Get ready, guys. Christine and Leah's parents were Clemence and Gustave. They were troubled way before the sisters were born. While Clemence was dating Gustave, it was rumoured that she was having an affair with her employer. However, after becoming pregnant, Gustave married her in October 1901. 5 months later, her first daughter, Amelia, was born. Suspecting that Clemence was still having an affair with her employer, Gustave found a new job in another city and announced that the family would be moving. This is where the sisters' role model came from. Clemence declared she would rather take her own life than leave the town that they are in. I don't know how to pronounce that. Their marriage deteriorated and Gustave began to drink heavily. Christine was born on the 8th of March in 1905. However, her mother was considered not to be nurturing and deemed unsuitable for motherhood. Christine was given to her paternal aunt and uncle soon after birth. She lived happily with them for 7 years. Leah was born on September the 15th in 1911, and she was also given to her maternal uncle, with whom she stayed with until he died. In 1912, when Amelia was 9 or 10, it was alleged that Gustave had raped her. Doting mummy Clemence accepted that Amelia had seduced her father and sent her to a Catholic orphanage, which was known for its brutality and discipline. Soon afterwards, Amelia was joined by Christine and Leah, who Clemence intended would remain at the orphanage until the age of 15, when they could be employed. At some point between 1903 and 1913, because we're going so far back, it's hard to get all the relevant information, but Clemence and Gustave got a divorce. And in 1918, Amelia decided to enter a convent, effectively ending her relations with all of her family. And as far as I can look back, she lived out her remainder of her life there. She seems to have come out of despair into a relatively good and calm life. Obviously sworn off men, she is a nun, and yeah, that's as much as we really know about Amelia. During Christine's time at the orphanage, she also received the calling to become a nun, but Clements forbade this, instead placing her in employment. Christine had been trained in various household duties in the convent, easing her into becoming a living maid. Christine was described as a hard worker and a good cook who was insubordinate at times. Leah was described as quiet, introverted and obedient, but was considered less intelligent than Christine. Employers were content with their work. However, Clements was not satisfied with their pay and forced them to seek better paid opportunities. The sisters worked as maids in various homes, but they did prefer to work together whenever possible. In 1926, Christine and Leah found live-in positions as maids for, excuse the pronunciation, but I'm going to say Lance Lynn family. Rennie, a retired solicitor, and his wife Leonie and their young daughter Genevieve lived in the house. They did have an older daughter who was married and didn't live at home. After a few months of excellent service, Christine convinced Leonie to hire Leah as a chambermaid. The two girls dedicated their lives to working long days and doing an astonishing job. However, some years later, Christine and Leah started working for the family. Leonie developed depression, and the girls became the target of her mental illness. She began to scrutinise the cleaning and had become critical of the job done. There were various occasions Leonie physically assaulted the girls. The abuse got worse, and at its peak she would slam the girls' heads against the wall. Now, if that was me and I was being abused by my employer, I would leave the job. Okay, but no, not Christine. On the evening of Thursday, the 2nd of February in 1933, Rene, the husband, was supposed to meet Leonie and Genevieve for dinner at the home of a family friend. Leonie and Genevieve had been shopping that day. They had been out all day and they were shopping. When they returned home that afternoon, no lights were on in the house. The Papin sisters explained to Leonie that the power outage had been caused by Christine urinating into an electric socket. I mean, that's quite dangerous for her, but okay. Leonie became irate and she attacked the sisters on the first floor landing. Christine lunged at Genevieve and gouged her eyes out. Leah joined in the struggle and attacked Leonie, gouging her eyes out as ordered by Christine. Christine ran downstairs to the kitchen where she retrieved a knife and a hammer. She brought both weapons upstairs where the sisters continued their attack. At some point, one of the sisters grabbed a heavy pewter pitcher, like a big metal jug, and used it to strike the heads of both Leonie and Genevieve. In the midst of the rage, they mutilated the bottoms and thighs of the victims. Experts who later responded to the scene estimated that the attack lasted about 2 hours. Sometime later, Rennie, the husband, returned home to find the house dark. He assumed that his wife and his daughter had left for the dinner party and proceeded to the party himself. When he arrived at his friend's house, he found that his family wasn't there. He returned to the house with his son-in-law at approximately 6:30 or 7 p.m, where they discovered the entire house still dark except for a light on in the Papin sisters' room. The front door was bolted shut from the inside, so they were unable to enter the house. The two men found this suspicious and went to a local police station to summon help from an officer. Together with the policeman, they responded to the Lance Lynn home, where the policeman made entry into the home by climbing over the garden wall. Once inside, he found the bodies of Leonie and her daughter Genevieve. They had both been bludgeoned and stabbed to the point of being unrecognisable. Leonie's eyes had been gouged out and were found in the folds of the scarf around her neck. One of Genevieve's eyes was found under her body and the other on the stairs nearby. Thinking that the Papin sisters had met the same fate, the policeman continued upstairs, only to find the door to the Papin sisters' room locked. After the officer knocked but received no response, he summoned a locksmith to open the door. Inside the room, he found the Papin sisters naked in bed together and a hammer, with hair still clinging to it, on a chair nearby. Upon questioning the sisters, they immediately confessed to the killing. The sisters confessed to the murder immediately. However, they claimed that it had been committed in self-defense. During the trial, the sisters protected each other and each confessed sole responsibility for the crimes committed. The sisters were placed in prison and separated from each other. Christine became extremely distressed because she could not see Leah. At one point, prison officials relented and allowed the two sisters to meet. Christine reportedly threw herself at Leah, unbuttoning her blouse, begging her, quote, "Please say yes," suggesting an incestuous sexual relationship. In July 1933, Christine experienced a fit or an episode in which she tried to gouge her own eyes out and had to be put in a straitjacket. She then made a statement to the investigating magistrate in which she said that on the day of the murders she had experienced an episode like this one she had just had in prison, and that this is what precipitated the murders. The sisters' chosen lawyer pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity on behalf of them. Christine and Leah demonstrated signs of mental illness, such as limiting eye contact and staring straight ahead, appearing to be in a daze. The court appointed 3 doctors to administer psychological evaluations of the sisters to determine their mental state. They concluded that the 2 had no mental disorders and deemed them sane and fit to stand trial. They also believed that Christine's affection for her sister was based on family ties, not an incestuous relationship as others had suggested. However, during the September 1933 trial, medical testimony noted a history of mental illness in the family. Their uncle had died by suicide, while their cousin was living in an asylum. The psychological community struggled and debated over a diagnosis for the sisters. After much consideration, it was concluded that Christine and Leah suffered from, quote, shared paranoid disorder, which is believed to occur when groups or pairs of people are isolated from the world, developing paranoia, and in which one partner dominates the other. This was especially true of Leah, whose meek personality was overshadowed by obstinate and dominant Christine. After the trial, jurors took 40 minutes to determine that the Papin sisters were guilty of the crime of which they had been accused. Leah thought to be under the influence of her older sister and was given a 10-year sentence. Christine was initially sentenced to death at the guillotine, although that sentence was later commuted to life imprisonment. The separation from Leah proved to be too much for Christine. Her condition deteriorated rapidly once they were apart. She had written various letters pleading to be with Leah. However, her wish was not to be granted. She experienced bouts of depression and madness, eventually refusing to eat. Prison officials transferred her to a mental institution, hoping that she would benefit from professional help. Still separated from Leah, she continued to starve herself until she died of, quote, wasting away on the 18th of March in 1937. Leah fared better than Christine, serving only 8 of her 10-year sentence due to good behaviour. After her release in 1941, she lived in the town of Nantes. Remember, that's French, so where she was joined by her mother. She assumed a false identity and earned a living as a hotel maid. Some accounts state that Leah died in 1982, but French film producer Claude Ventura claimed to have discovered Leah living in a hospice centre in France in 2000 while creating the film In Search of the Papin sisters. The woman he claimed to be Leah had suffered a stroke which rendered her partially paralysed and unable to speak. This woman died in 2001. The sisters are buried together. The case had a huge impact on the community and was debated intensely. Some people considered that the murders had been the result of exploitation of the workers. considering that the maids worked 14-hour days with only half a day off each week. Intellectuals empathised with the sisters' oppressive struggle of the social classes. So there you go. That is the case of the Papin sisters. Let me know your thoughts down below. Have you heard of this case before? What are your thoughts? It's a very strange and bizarre case, especially Christine. I think Leah, by the sounds of it, was more relieved when Christine died. But I don't know. This is just my afterthoughts and my opinions. But she did fare much better and lived into old age, I have to say. So, yeah, please do leave me a comment down below, and I shall see you very soon for another true crime. Stay safe out there. Bye.